Tonight, Crash catches up with one of the great characters ever to play the game, almost as famous for his television career as his cricket. He had an international career that spanned from 1981 to 1993 and was one of the few lucky enough to play with Dennis Lillee and Shane Warne. He's a great friend of mine. His name is Michael Roy Whitney. He is a cricket legend. And as a bowling partner for New South Wales, naturally, I had down breeze and he had up breeze. And that's the way it'll always be.
Welcome, Whit.
Thanks, Crash. Nice to be here.
We've never had a guest on Cricket Legends quite like you. Since you've retired, you've fronted a rock band, you've had a long and decorated career as a television host.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, do you ever get hauled up by anyone who says, hey, I just found out you used to be a cricketer?
Yeah, I do. It doesn't bother me too much nowadays. Early doors after I just retired, people said that because I very quickly got consumed with the TV and as soon as I started with the Seven Network, I was doing 3 shows within 6 months and it was like national exposure. So I used to get a little bit ruffled and sort of, oh, you know, I played Test cricket and all that. But now I'm sort of flattered that the television has been such a big thing and it stands alone from that. And people who have seen me on television for the last 20 years genuinely didn't know I played cricket. But of course, without the cricket, all of this just would not have happened.
And you were the centre point of some of the most dramatic selection decisions of your era. And we'll start with the best and the brightest, and one which still makes the jaw drop. When you were playing league cricket at the little fishing village, Fleetwood in England, and you were turfed into an Ashes test out of absolute nowhere in 1981. It still makes the mind boggle.
Yeah, 80-81 was my debut year with the Blues, and I think if my memory's right, I played 4 games, and I was 12th man for the other 5, so I spent the whole season with the team. And I decided I wanted to go and play league cricket. A lot of guys were going to play in Lancashire leagues and stuff like that. On the back of a couple of games I played for Gloucester and the Australian team was touring, Henry and Rodney Hogg were injured. Carl Rackerman was there on an SO scholarship at the time. He was injured and they'd seen me play a couple of games on the TV for Gloucester. And I got called into the Australian Test cricket team.
I can imagine the phone call. It must have been, hello, who's this?
I actually swore because I thought it was I was sitting on the balcony at Cheltenham and Gloucester was playing Hampshire and the phone came out and the room attendant said, oh, there's someone on the phone for you, Mike. And this Aussie voice came on and said, you've been selected to play in the Test match starting tomorrow. Malcolm Marshall was bowling and running through us. And I just went, listen, and give him a golf. I thought it was a mate of mine geeing up. Hung the phone up, rang back and said, this is Fred Bennett, manager of the Australian cricket team. Leave now, come straight up to the hotel in Manchester and I'll see you in room 227 when you get here. Reckon Malcolm was on fire. I got them pads off real quick, I'm telling you. Packed the bags and left, went up to Manchester, a couple of hours drive and went up to the room and apologised to Fred as soon as I walked in and Kim Hughes was sitting there, the captain, and said, you'll be bowling first change tomorrow after Dennis Lillee and Terry Alderman open the bowling. They gave me a key and said, go up to the room. At 6 o'clock, we're going to have a press conference to announce your selection. I got into the room and looked around and saw a suitcase over in the corner embossed on that was DK Lillee. And I just look, Dennis is still a god to most of us, but at that time, he was pretty much at the peak of his career, although he had suffered pneumonia on that Ashes tour and was sort of still, but he still did the business. He walked in about 10 minutes later and I remember standing to attention in the room. I didn't know what to do, but he was fabulous. Absolutely sensational. We're still great mates.
Was it true you couldn't actually get into the ground on the morning of the test?
Yes. I was, whatever Dennis did the next morning, I did. If he went and cleaned the teeth, I was straight in after him, off to the toilet, me too. This is the great one. I'm just going to replicate everything. We get down to breakfast, no one's there. He tells me the bus is already gone. I remember just looking at him thinking, oh, this is my first morning of Test cricket. We got a lift there from a mate of his and I was late into the dressing room. I bumped into Jeffrey Boycott on the stairs going up. That blew my mind away. Look, I stepped into this realm of cricket. I was unprepared. I didn't really understand the etiquette of the game. It was my 7th first-class match, and I'm in the dressing room with Kim Hughes, Dennis Lilly, Terry Alderman, Rodney Marsh, John Dyson, all these guys I'd looked up to and just met them briefly in the season before. You know, before I know it, the toss, we've lost, we're out, we're bowling. Surreal.
When you and Dennis went to the ground, you obviously got separated. The doorman just said, no, you're not coming in here.
Yeah, Dennis stayed talking to his mate who dropped us off in the car park, and I wanted to shoot upstairs to say, Kim, I'm here. And the doorman said, what you think you're doing, young lad? And I said, mate, I'm in the Australian cricket team. He went, I've heard some stories, but that's a real good one, mate, you know, and he wasn't going to let me in. So I made him ring the dressing room. Up you go, up into Jeff Boycott. Oh, sorry, Mr. Boycott. And he said, oh, good luck, not too much. And I got in the dressing room and Kim's eyes are down like this and I felt really embarrassed. And he went, come here. He said, if you think you're special, Dennis does this to every debutant that plays his first test match, no matter where it... Oh, thank God for that. It was more relief than anything, yeah.
4 wickets on Test debut, and David Gower, your first. I mean, a man never forgets his first Test wicket, they tell us. Can you still see it?
I remind him all the time. Yeah, he came in and it was my first over and he'd actually played at one and it went straight to Graham Wood at first slip, who got his hands there and it burst through his hands, hit him in the mouth and he went down. And he left the field. I was shocked. Then, after a couple of deliveries, the rain came and we all went off for an hour. So I think this is still the longest debut over in Test cricket history because I had to come back on and bowl the last 3 balls of the over an hour and a bit later, my first over in Test cricket. He tried to play the same shot the next over and it went to Graham Yallop in the gully, who took a fabulous catch. I think I had 1 for 6 or 1 for 8 off 2 overs and thought, how easy is this? I learned very quickly it wasn't that easy.
And you had some tough times, didn't you? 8 knee operations, including a time when a doctor said to you, it's finished, Whit, you'll never play again. And you were absolutely outraged, weren't you?
Yeah, I remember jumping in the car with my sister and just saying, you know, that bloke's just said I wasn't going to play again and I'm not going to cop that. And I was, you know, probably 22 or 23, maybe 24 at the time. And I just thought, no, I'm not copping that at all.
Was it true you stormed back into his surgery?
Yeah.
I can't believe this story, Whit.
And said I'm going to get a second opinion.
Yeah. What did he say when you barged the door open?
Just the look on his face, and I said, look, you know, with all due respect, I'm going to get a second opinion. And I, you know, for a specialist, an orthopaedic surgeon, to hear that from one of his patients, that didn't go down really well, let me tell you. So I did, and yeah, it got sorted out and played until I was 35. Played another at least 10 years after that.
And the boys loved your enthusiasm for Australia, including when you wrote your name on your shirt when you didn't even have to. They still talk about Mike being quite green when he first started.
Mark Waugh had just made it into the side. Because he was MW and I was MW, I'd start to get some of his laundry back and we were missing stuff. So I started to write Whit on mine, and we just got these brand new one-day shirts. We're down in Hobart just about to play this one-day game, and I'm writing Whit on the inside collar of the one-day shirt, and Junior goes, turn it round, Widow. And I turn it round and there's Whitney printed across the back of it. I went, don't you ever tell anybody that I've ever done that. But he has. He's earned a lot of money out of that story, I know.
How do you feel when a nasty ball sees a 9th wicket fall and there's a groan from the hill? How do you feel? 3 runs to go and they move in close for the final kill. How do you feel when you face Big Joe for the final ball and your blood chills? How do you feel when a cover drive sees the runs in sight and you run like hell? How do you feel when you beat the ball stretched out on the field? How do you feel? How do you feel? I feel like a Tooheys. I feel like a Tooheys. I feel like a Tooheys or two. I feel like a Tooheys. I feel like a Tooheys. I feel like a Tooheys rough brew.
Oh, it's a timeless commercial, isn't it, Whit? They didn't set you a very hard task, did they? Facing Joel Garner, do you mind? And asking you to cover drive him.
And my batting average was like .7 at the time. So, look, it was done on Football Park in Adelaide. It wasn't even a cricket wicket. They had a sheet metal slab that he was bowling on. And I just couldn't hit him through the covers. So I'm going to fess up now, Crash. It was all done with mirrors. I never actually hit the ball.
Yes. So what happened? Where did that ball come from?
After about 3 hours of Joel trying to bowl and me not being able to play the shot, he said, "I'm over this. I'm over it. My arm's hanging down 7 feet long," and all this sort of stuff. He said, "You film Whit from the back and the front and I'll throw the ball and I'll get it right and it'll look like he's hit it." And that's what happened. Really? He threw the ball out to the boundary and I timed the swing right and it looked like I'd hit it out to Viv, chased it out to the boundary, then threw it in. How bizarre.
And one of your defining moments was the rearguard action. 1987, you were recalled from the Test match wilderness after 6 painful years in exile.
Yeah.
Australia had not won a series in 3 years of Alan Border's captaincy.
Yeah.
You and Craig McDermott in that defiant last wicket stand, 18 balls. It must still give you joy. What's your main memory of it?
Look, people still remember that because of all those reasons. Alan hadn't won a series as a captain. They actually had the Trans-Tasman Trophy. So, you know, if we hold them out or get the runs, I think we needed 36 runs or something, which we're never going to get in that time. It's a win for us because we'd already won 1 test. If they win, it's a drawn series. They retain the Trans-Tasman Cup. Richard Hadley had just equalled Ian Botham's world record, so he's only got to get Billy or I out. He's the new world record holder. He'd just taken 10 for 5 and 5. I mean, there was a lot going on. I remember walking out, Alan just sort of tapped me on the shoulder and went, hoping that he was going to have his first series win, and I'm thinking, oh, geez, mate, don't put the extra pressure on. But we went out there. I remember Billy McDermott punching me in the chest, saying we can get the runs. I said, stop hitting me. We're not going to get the 36 in whatever many balls, man. It's just like, think about it. So let's just hang in there. Second last over, there was a couple of very close LBW decisions off Danny Morrison. It was New South Wales umpire Dick French at the end, and I was backing up. One was very close, and the Kiwis weren't really impressed with that. They thought it was pretty close. And I've asked Dick about it in the ensuing years, and he goes, "Whit, in my opinion, that LBW, Danny Morrison, Craig McDermott, was not out." And I go, "That's my man, Dick. That's my man," all these years down the track. But I ended up facing the last over. How I got down that end, I don't know, because Craig could actually bat a bit, you know. He was a big hitter of the ball and had a bit better technique. But look, the lovely story about that is we survived, and walking off, the first thing Richard did was put his arm around me and said, "Man, I know you can't bat." So that was a monumental effort. Congratulations. And Ian Smith came up and gave me that cricket ball. Years and years go by, and I'm with Richard about 3 years ago, and he goes, "Have you still got that cricket ball?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "It's the only one of my 36 5-wicket hauls in Test cricket that I haven't got." And I went, "Bad luck, it's mine." I gave it back to him during the World Cup in Melbourne the day before the final of the World Cup. I went down there to a function. I'd had it for 27 years in my possession. And at a dinner down there, I got up on stage and handed him that ball back and gave it to him.
Was it an emotional moment for you?
It was very emotional for me, and he got 10 times more emotional than I did, because now this makes his set complete. Richard and I, from that day, have always been pretty good friends. I mean, look, he's an icon to me, and I've done a few gigs with him and travelled a bit with him. He's a delightful bloke to be with, and just one of the all-time greats. But I just thought it was the right thing. He took the fifer. If I took 2 7-fers, I've got both those balls, and they're really special to me. And I just thought, after 27 years, yeah, you've got to have this to complete your set. So it was emotional, and I felt very good about it.
And a couple of years later, you had a great moment as a Test match bowler when on a flat Adelaide wicket, you took 7 wickets in an innings against the West Indies.
Yeah.
And then you said something interesting. You said, "I'm so glad that Imran Khan came to New South Wales and played Sheffield Shield cricket, because I sucked his brains relentlessly and he taught me a few secrets." That must have been interesting, because he was such a towering figure in the game, to get behind the curtain, so to speak.
It was quite a surprise when the then Secretary of New South Wales Cricket Association, as it was called then, announced to the team that he'd secured Imran Khan to play for New South Wales. It was the 84-5 season. I mean, we couldn't believe it, because here's this Pakistani absolute champion with bat and ball, and also was single, and everywhere he went, he had a harem hanging off him. And we were all single. I mean, it's just, man, we're going to play with him and hang out with him everywhere he goes for the whole season. Sadly for me, I had a couple of bad knee operations that year. So I didn't play a lot of cricket, but I was still with the team and was at the net sessions and talked to him about bowling reverse swing. And he was the one that got Henry and I onto it, Brad McNamara, Steve Waugh, and we got really good at it. The SCG pretty much for my whole career was a turner. And we had to learn how to bowl this reverse, and he taught us, and that 7 I got in Adelaide was all reverse or Irish swing.
So you'd taken your 7 wickets in an innings against the West Indies. You were the leading Australian first-class wicket taker that summer.
Yep.
But a couple of months later, Mike, and you know where I'm going now, you were a picture of absolute devastation when you were omitted from the touring party to England.
Yeah.
Can you remember where you were when the news came through?
Yeah, I was coming back from the city in the car actually with my sister, and things were different in those days. I mean, there was no mobile phones. They didn't actually call you to say you are in the touring team. It was announced on the ABC by someone like Jimmy Maxwell at 3 p.m. on that day. That's how you found out. And we're listening, they're going through the team, and because my name's a W, I'm always, War. And I'd heard another name, Campbell, Greg Campbell, who was a seamer from Tassie, and a handy bowler. Campbell was a real good bowler. And his name had been mentioned, and I hadn't heard his name in the mix too much. And Richie had written me into it. Every journo had written me into the team. And mate, when Richie wrote you into the team, mate, you were pretty sure you were going to get a berth. And Jimmy at the end said, and the huge shock is the omission of New South Wales left-arm paceman Mike Whitney. Oh, mate, because I'd worked really hard, Crash, really worked really hard, got over some bad knee injuries. I was super fit. I was really at the top of my game. The 7 mentally was a huge thing for me. You walk off after bowling out that West Indies team thinking, I can cut it at this level now. I know I can. There was always a few question marks in your head, but I can cut it at this level, mate. Viv, Gordon, Desi, Richie Rich, Gus Logie, Hooper, Dujon. I mean, it was a big thing for me. So, yeah, mate, I was
There was a magnificent cricket story written the next day, perhaps one of the best of that whole decade, when Greg Growden rang up your house and you didn't answer the phone. Jeff Lawson answered the phone and he burst into tears and he said to Greg, I don't feel like making the trip. Whit deserves it more than I do. And it just summed up the mood, and it was so rare to see a man bleed for a teammate like that. Can you remember that moment?
Yeah, I can. And look, Hen and I had been opening the bowling for 9 odd seasons, and we'd both been through our trials and tribulations, bad injuries, recuperation, stuff like that. You play with people for a decade or more, you live with them, you train with them, you become a brotherhood. And Henry, Mo, all those guys, the Ward twins, they're all my brothers. They still are. But Henry and I had actually spoken about, wow, what about if we both make it and we're playing at Lord's together and whatever it may be. And he was shattered. And he also knew that I was at the top of my game and I'd had this amazing season and taken 50+ first-class wickets, and he was shattered. He was the first one round, followed very quickly by my mother and sister.
Did you ever find out why? I mean, there's, sportsmen love that sense of, squaring everything off and finding out the reasons why. And I've no doubt you would have asked selectors over the thing.
I fronted the 4 selectors very early the next season. I went away. I never said too much in the paper. I never bagged anybody. I just wished the team good luck and said basically that, look, if the selectors thought that was the team that should go, they think that's the best team for English conditions. I hope the boys go well. As you know, that was an amazing turning point for Australian cricket. That was the awakening of Steve Waugh, and Clemmy Alderman had another unbelievable series, and we turned that round and we kicked their backside. So I was disappointed that I wasn't a part of that, but it opened up a few business doors for me in the off season and after dinner speaking as well. But to get to your question, at the start of the next season, I sought out Laurie Saul, chairman of selectors. I sought out Jim Higgs. I sought out Simo, who was also a selector, and I sought out John Benno, who was the other selector. 3 of those guys told me they picked me. 1 told me they didn't pick me.
Really?
So
who said they didn't pick you?
Well, I'd rather not. Who said they didn't? John Benno. John Benno said he didn't pick me for these reasons.
Yep.
I don't know why the other guys would have said they did say, but obviously someone's telling a porky pie amongst there, because if 3 picked me and 1 didn't, I would have got the vote and gone.
It was interesting, though, in retrospect, you could mount an argument to say that missing that tour was the best thing that ever happened to you, in a sense that your profile just rocketed.
Yeah.
And which leads me to the next part of the story. Television projects like Who Dares Wins. I mean, you're as famous for that as some of your cricketing deeds because of that, you know, the success of the program. What's your memory of that show?
Look, people ask me about it. We haven't filmed it since about 1998. People still ask me about it on a regular basis. Are you going to dare me? Who Dares Wins? All the blokes say, where's Tanya? And I go, not with you, champ. That's for sure. But it made such a huge impact. I mean, there's an age group of people that, you know, I've even had Matty John say to me, him and Joey used to run home to watch Who Dares Wins. And I used to say, not to watch me, to watch Tanya, for sure. But it made a huge impact. It was the first reality TV show of that type, and a lot of stuff has now followed that lead. So, yeah, look, I used to sort of think, oh, I've moved on a bit from it and why are people still talking about it? But this far down the track, I'm humbled that people still remember and the position that it holds in Australian TV as one of the first reality TV shows. I started at Channel 7 on the 1st of January 1995, and within 6 months, I was doing Sydney Weekender, Gladiators, and Who Dares Wins. It was like out of cricket and woof, jumping in straight into this entertainment side of television. And it was probably too much at the time, but I value that time because it really taught me a lot, like exponential graph in far as learning about TV.
Well, it was interesting after being snubbed on the 1989 tour, you proved your point by coming back and making the West Indies tour a couple of years later.
Yeah.
And man, oh man, wasn't that a spicy tour? Like, that was nasty stuff, wasn't it? Certainly it seemed that way.
Yeah, look, most of the times I played against the West Indies, they had that 4-prong pace attack with 10 guys waiting in the wings. I mean, it was pretty vicious, and they were still a great side. It's a tough place to play. They hadn't been beaten at home for a long, long time, and, you know, there were other things. I mean, Viv and Simo weren't getting on. He was the captain of the West Indies and he didn't like Bobby Simpson, and, you know, there was a bit of tension there, and just a couple of things didn't go right. And, yeah, it was a tough tour, but, you know, look, the Caribbean's just a wonderful place to go, and they were still the days when there was 10,000 people in the ground and 5,000 people hanging off the stands and climbing up in the trees to watch the game, and the music, it was wonderful, wonderful.
I can remember a couple of times when Patterson in particular seemed to really go at you hard for some reason. I'm not sure why, but he just seemed to.
Yeah, I went in on a hat-trick in Jamaica in the first Test match, and I didn't realise it was a hat-trick. They were actually, I thought they were chanting Patrick as I walked out because he'd just got back into the side. And Bernie was 106 not out or something like that. And as I walked out, I heard it sort of, hat trick, and I thought, oh no. Billy had gotten out, Billy McDermott, and Merv had gotten out the next ball, and I didn't realise. So I get out there and I went to Bernie, hat trick. He goes, like that. And I said, I'm glad you got your 100. He went, me too. Because he was on 98, he's going to get left on 98. But yeah, it was a big build-up. Patrick's running in for the hat-trick ball, and I'm not focused, and I stepped away and made out there was a fly in my helmet, and Patrick was in the gather. He was in the gather ready to let this ball go and had to stop and sort of wound down. He was standing in front of me, mate. He had saliva. He was that angry. He had snot and saliva blowing out of his mouth and nose, and Viv sent him back. He said, Withers, it's got into your brain. Look at you, you got snot and saliva coming out of your mouth. And then he bowled the hat-trick ball, which I sort of half ducked, but it was a Yorker. And he wasn't happy with that, so he went after him. And he was really quick and didn't know where they were going, Patrick.
Mike, tell us about your life at Sydney Weekender. It's been a very enduring part of your life, hasn't it?
21 years. I'm in my 21st year now. The show they'd only made 6 or 7 episodes when I started hosting it early in 1995, and I sort of grew with the show, and it's only had 2 executive producers, Charlie Wood first and Alan Dungy second. Alan I've worked with for 18 years, and that was his first job as an EP. So Alan and I grew together with this show and just changed it in subtlety, and I was learning about TV, and I got a chance then to sit in the edit suite, think about audio, the process of what happens from filming right till it goes to air. I know that now. I'm fascinated by it. Alan and I are like 2 old mates that just bounce around with Sydney Weekender, and we love the show and we try to put the best show to air. And, this is the reality of it. I get to travel around my state that I'm a die-hard blue bagger, played cricket for, every week around the whole state. It's so diverse. It's so amazing. People ask me, Crash, where should I go for holidays in New South Wales? And I go north, south or west, anywhere, throw a dart on a map of New South Wales. It's phenomenal. But there's a couple of places you must go once. Lord Howe Island, Norfolk Island and Broken Hill. Now they're the eastern and western extremities of New South Wales, and everything in between that is fascinating.
There's a bit of a theory that when your working life is done, when everything's done and dusted, you'll retreat to some desert island or faraway place with a surfboard and maybe a few pots and pans, and we may never see you again. Will that happen?
Yep, for sure.
And when you do, Mike, I might just pop in and have a beer with you, because I must say this, you're not just one of the great stories in Australian cricket, you're one of the great stories